And that means you're not climbing that ladder anymore. You're climbing a wall. And why we like the climbing wall is that when you're climbing, you're trying to go up. Everyone's trying to go up, just like the ladder, but there's no one way to go up. And when you're climbing, sometimes you go down to go up. Sometimes you go sideways to go up. Sometimes you pause and rethink your entire strategy.
So, hello, welcome to another episode of Hiring Excellence. I'm Johnny Campbell, your host for today's podcast and CEO and co-founder of Social Talent. And today we're going to be talking about the world of work in the most broadest sense, but the most important sense. We're going to be talking about the impact of AI on careers, on talent, on opportunity. And in particular, we're going to be focusing on those of you in the workplace at the moment who are looking to find a new job, but also those of you listening who run talent teams, talent acquisition teams, thinking about how you're deploying talent across the business, thinking about jobs, thinking about careers, the topics I know you're into right now. Because we have a phenomenal guest today who's going to help us unpack this with the most brilliant background. Aneesh Raman is the Chief Economic Opportunity Officer with LinkedIn. He's a former journalist who's worked in the White House as a speechwriter, has had the most fabulous career himself, a skills-first career, I would argue. And he's going to be talking to us about his latest book, which has just been published called Open to Work, which he's co-written with Ryan Roslansky. And this book is a great book. I managed to get my hands on an early copy and dig into it. And it is both a guide for the average person, whether you're 20 or 64, looking for opportunity in the workforce today, but also talent leaders like you listening here today, trying to navigate your way through this and make decisions and give advice to your own organizations. So enough from me, though. I'm delighted to welcome Aneesh to the show. Aneesh, perhaps you can introduce yourself, tell us where you're joining from, and also maybe give us some background as to, first of all, what is a Chief Economic Opportunity Officer and how you got here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Anyone who is watching or listening, you are forgiven if you're asking that exact question. It is a job my co-author, our CEO, made up about a year and a half ago. I don't think anyone's had it before, hoping others have it in the future. But I do think it's in some ways the story of where work is going. So my career by job title makes absolutely no sense. I started as a war correspondent for CNN. I became a speechwriter for President Obama. I did growth and marketing at a few startups. I then went to Facebook to lead economic impact, then joined the California governor's office as a senior advisor on economic strategy, then ended up at LinkedIn, now in my third job with a made up title. And the way it makes sense for me, and I encourage everyone to do this sort of math as we enter this new world of work, is that at some point early in my time at LinkedIn, I just put all the job titles aside. And I did what we had been counseling others to do, which is I went to my profile and I listed the skills that I used in each job, because we were really and still are pushing everyone to put skills to the center of how we match talent and opportunity. And that starts with how we describe ourselves. It starts with our story of self. And as I did that, it got really easy, really quick. All my jobs have been to some degree or another about explanatory storytelling. How do I make the complex simple? Um, at some point in my career, when I left journalism to go into politics, I decided I didn't want to just tell the story. I wanted to mobilize action around it. So coalition building became a skill set. That, by the way, is a skill set for business development and growth at a startup, as much as for policy advocacy and advising the California governor. And then about a decade ago, I really locked in on economic opportunity as this cause of my life, this 50-year problem I wanted to help solve. How do we help more people get access to more opportunity and more economic mobility? So now, instead of the job titles, if I say I'm someone who does explanatory storytelling to build coalitions around the cause of economic opportunity, well, it makes sense. I'm in this made up job at LinkedIn at this time because we're going through the greatest disruption to work, I think, in human history. And for a platform like LinkedIn, that is, if nothing else, a platform of people, a billion members of the global workforce, we need to be out there shaping the global response, shaping the global conversation with explanatory storytelling, with coalition building. And so I think all of us are going to have some version of what I had over my career, which is pieces from different jobs, if you put aside the titles, that you're pulling together around your core interests, your core curiosities and capabilities, and starting to apply it to the job you're doing right now. And even if you don't have the title change, the job is going to change and you can change it on your terms.
So I want to unpack some of that, Anish, because we're living in an age where everyone's talking about AI, but a lot of it's fearful, right? Jensen Wang, for example, a couple of weeks ago, the Nvidia CEO talked about their massive growth, how they're building more and more factories to build more chips because the demand for AI seems to be insatiable. And he touched on the next phase of this being robotics, because we're
Mhm.
particularly in 2026, we've seen this massive fear and stock market collapse in some respects around tech companies saying, well, tech jobs are gone. AI are taking the tech jobs. And now there's a hint towards robotics and AI and robotics, which might take away the blue collar jobs. Is that the way we should see AI, or are people getting it wrong perhaps? Or what do you think in terms of how people should be thinking about AI and jobs?
Yeah, I mean, at the core, the reason we wrote the book is because of what you just called out. The conversation around AI and work is so charged. It's so fear-inducing. Raise your hand if every time you read a headline, it stresses you out more than you were before. Um, and so we wanted to make sure that people felt some way to approach this moment of change that is big, and some way to develop agency within it as an individual, and some way even to get to aspiration around what's possible. I think for everyone to know, when we go through all this in the book, there are a few things that are playing out. The first is the human brain is wired to fear change, and it is wired to not get exponential change. Our book is not a how to AI book; it's a how to human with AI book, and most of the book is actually about humans, how we think, how we work, what we're capable of, what work has not allowed us to do that we think the future of work will. So we really focus a lot on the human brain, and we talk to neuroscientists. We talk about evolutionary biology, anthropology. So we are wired to fear change. We are not wired to get exponential change. So the biology of being human means this moment is really tough because this is a moment of change. It is a moment of exponential change. Now, there are two truths that we have to hold that are kind of inconsistent. The first truth is we've been here before. Across the industrial age, from the steam engine to electricity to the internet, we have had technology that has emerged, disrupted work, and it follows an S curve. And we go into this in the book that ultimately at the other end, we do see a net gain in employment. We generally come out of this, we go through a messy period, there's disruption, lives are upended. Um, it's harder than it needs to be because we don't always, if often, have the government response and the company response that we need to make sure all workers get brought along, but we end up with more jobs. That's thing one. Thing two is we've never been here before. This technology is fundamentally different than any technology we've had before. It is coming at what we've defined as broadly human cognition in a way that other technology hasn't. So, what to do with those two things? What we did in the book was we started with this assumption that humans have something core about us that makes us unique in the arena of work. We started with what's possible for humans, not what's left. Now, to do that, we have to first define what is human capability. And we do that in the book around some core characteristics, some habits. But ultimately, where we netted out was that what makes us us is that we're quite entrepreneurial. That's one way to think about it. The human brain, in terms of size and shape, is about 300,000 years old. In terms of ability for complex thought to create stories that create nation states, the monetary order, at least 40,000 years old. The industrial age is only a couple of hundred years old. So everything about work from the steam engine to now that has been about the speed and scale of production of goods and services, everything about that for humans has been be machine like. Everything's about efficiency. Everything's about more, better, faster, more, better, faster. That's true if you were on the factory floor on an assembly line. It's true if you're on a laptop in an office, more, better, faster spreadsheets, more, better, faster coding. AI is going to take a lot of the more, better, faster. It's going to out machine us. And so a lot of the fear, to bring us back to your opening, a lot of the fear is, wait, it's going to do what I think I'm supposed to do at work better than me. But we are humans, not machines. And so the fact that a machine is going to out machine us should say more about what we've let work become in the industrial age rather than whether there's work for us to do. And our offering is that actually work's going to go back to some of the fundamentals that have led humanity to progress over all these millennia, which is the intrepidness that we have, the imaginative like nature we have, the innovation we unlock with our curiosity and creativity on our own with others. And that to me is where you start to see all sorts of opportunity, but also where you see all sorts of work that we've got to do to reshape and redesign the systems of education and employment. So I would just tell everyone who's feeling afraid, it makes sense, it's understandable, but also it's unhelpful. It's going to hold you back from really leaning into this moment, using the tools, reshaping your job, rethinking your career. And there's a lot of opportunity for folks who can push past that fear right now.
And each one of the big ideas you explore a lot in the start of the book, which I think really helps folks understand this, is the concept that a job is not a job as you might perceive it, that jobs are really just bundles of tasks. Can you explain that to us and maybe explain the impact then that has with an AI world exploding around us?
There's so much data out there, and I think often it's confusing, contradictory, or it's again just like fueling this fear that something big is coming to get me. The number I think that all of us should take hold of is 70%. So 70% is our estimation of the average amount of skills that are going to change in the average job by 2030. 7-0. That's a lot. So that means your job is going to change on you, even if you're not changing jobs, into a completely different job. Now, when I say that, what I know about human, biology, people are going to be like, "Oh my gosh, that's anxiety producing as a number, that's fear inducing as a number." I get that. Now, what I want you to do is say, "Okay, if my job is going to change by 70%, what do I do about that?" Now, again, the human response naturally is, well, where do I go to find the answer? Like, what does my job look like at the other end of that 70%? Do CEOs know? Do governments know? Do the media know? Do academics know? We're looking for others to help us figure this out because that is an impossible thing to figure out. What does a job that I'm in look like if 70% of the skills have changed? Now, this is the most important part in all this. No one knows that answer. Only you know that answer. And you are going to figure out that answer. And we help you in the book step by step, day by day, by how you change your job. No one knows your job better than you. No one knows what you actually do every day, what is a value that you do, what is the important stuff, the hard stuff, the critical stuff that moves things forward. No one knows that better than you. So the way we offer up in the book is forget your title. And this applies, by the way, again, to the CEO as well as the newest hire. This is for everyone. Put aside your job title. Every week, you do about a dozen tasks that are the most important tasks that you do. Working with others to solve problems in new ways, turning out reports, coding, getting on calls with customers, whatever it is, list them out. And then we offer this bucket framework. You're going to take those dozen tasks and you're going to put them into one of three buckets. The first bucket are tasks that AI can or very soon will be able to do. Coding is an example, quick summary is an example, quick analysis, the first draft of content, like all the stuff that AI can do, you're putting in bucket one. Bucket two is what are you going to do with AI? And this is not assign AI bucket one stuff. This is stuff that AI is helping you do in a new way. I need to learn something really quickly. I'm meeting with a sales team tomorrow and I don't know their language. I need to get smart on that. I'm going to use the tools to very quickly close an expertise gap. I need to present tomorrow to a team and I don't have a good visual. I actually want to think about a PowerPoint deck, a video, something that will really help them understand this idea. The tools can help me do that. Bucket two is how are you doing your day to day work, but in this new, bigger, bolder way on the learning side and on the building side. And then bucket three is what are you doing with other humans? If AI has taken a lot of stuff off your plate, that's the efficiency work, the machine work, and you're able to think about new things and build new things with bucket two, what are you going to go do in terms of a partnership or connection with other humans with that? I'm going to go meet with someone on a totally different team and see if they're solving a similar problem and we can do it together. I want to launch this like new business line. I'm going to start like partnering with people across the org and figure out how we get the resourcing to do that. Bucket three is human with human. Everyone aided by AI, but human with human. So now as you lay out your 12 tasks, it's a math thing. If 11 out of your 12 are in bucket one, you're in the red zone. And so if you're a software engineer, for example, who all you do all day, every day is code, you've probably by now already gotten the notice that like that's not where you want to be. So if AI is going to do coding, I'm going to do more with AI to conceive of what we should build or to conceive of the systems architecture of our tech stack. And I'm going to be spending more time with others. Is that with customers to better understand what they need us to build? Is that with our product and eng team to think about the ethical implications of what we're building? I need to start moving into that. But over time, like a conveyor belt, we're all going to want to move our tasks away from bucket one and find our fit across bucket two and bucket three into a job that we have changed on our terms around high value work that's delivering for our organization, but also around high value capabilities that we have across bucket two and three. And as you do that, you start to figure out your math on explanatory storytelling that builds coalitions around economic opportunity. Like you come up with your own secret sauce that is unique to you, and we end up, as we have a chapter with this title in the book, where nobody beats you at being you.
Mm.
And that's where we all want to get to.
So does this mean, Anish, though, that traditional job descriptions are dead, or like what do we hire for now? Because we have traditionally hired for previous experience, job titles, a description of, oh, I do the thing or I can achieve the outcome. How does that change in this new world?
I think at least for the next probably decade, because we'll see how it all shakes out, and maybe there'll be some new order to it that we can get back to what the industrial age was, which is that you built an org chart around stability, predictability, silos, functions. Um, we need a work chart now. That's what we talk about in the book, because that org chart is going to hold back innovation that has to happen from within. Right now, I think more than anything else, you're hiring for sort of adaptability, entrepreneurialism, resilience on the habit side, and then AI savviness, like a knowledge of the tools, but a use of the tools that's helping you as an individual and as a team do new work in that bucket two area, and then new things with other humans in that bucket three area. And what's interesting in the whole conversation we're having about entry level work and the difficulty that new grads are having finding jobs is that while it is true that this is a very competitive job market and a really tough moment of uncertainty to walk into as a new college grad, and a new worker, what I just described is sort of the key things you'd hire for: entrepreneurialism
Yeah.
and like AI savviness. That generation's walking into work with a pretty good sense of both of those, because they've had to be resilient and learn about side hustles and gigs, and they don't think that one job at one company is going to be their career, and they've just grown up with AI. And so for all of us, like I think it really is about what we call in the book the 5 C's: curiosity, creativity, compassion, courage, communication, like those core human skills. And then what we attach to it in terms of adaptability, resilience, all the things that make you entrepreneurial, that's what you've got to hire for. Now that's not like terribly helpful, I know. But neither is the way that you're hiring right now. To filter by degree, to assume I need the job title that I'm hiring for to exist on your resume before you can apply, that's going to also prove unhelpful. And so this is now that moment for HR professionals, talent professionals, to do their own building from within. What this is where I can give everyone direction, but you'll have to give yourself decisions for yourself and for your team and for your organization, because everyone's different. And that's the point. That's the beauty. But that means that no one's going to have an off the shelf handbook for you to figure out how to hire. You got to think about the company you're in. What are the problems that you're facing? What are the areas you need to adapt into? Who do you have across the org that's got those skills? How do you build around the work? If you're launching a new product in a new country, you might have people that aren't in marketing, but are over in product or engineering, who really know that community and have a lot that they could offer, but you're not built to bring that expertise or skill set in. If you've got something that you're building, you might have someone in marketing who actually like lives and breathes that use case that you need to bring in to make sure that they're able to contribute to how that product roadmap builds. That's not how the org chart is built. So you're going to have to figure out, and we offer in the book some sort of structural ways to think about it. But the minute you're starting to solve that problem, as messy as it's going to be at the front end, you're doing the right thing, because you're going to learn as you go.
Anish, one thing I really loved about the book, back to your early journalistic days, you tell great stories of real characters throughout the book. Maybe could you walk us through an example of one of those characters in terms of
Yeah.
how they use AI, what it looks like for them, just so we can bring it to life for folks listening?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably the most important part of the book, which is the humans of the book. We have real people who have real lives that everyone can connect to and appreciate on both the sort of expert side, whether it's a neuroscientist or an organizational psychologist or an expert on entrepreneurship. These are people that have come up in a way similar to mine all over the place. Like these are people that have tried to break the rules as they've risen. So they have really good things to advise us with. And then we have just everyday workers across every like stage of career, every sector. And they really will help, I think, readers connect with some of the key lessons. So a big lesson right now is we all got to use AI, but we can't overuse it and we can't misuse it. And so Neil Pretty is a story we have in the book. Neil runs a consulting firm. He works with companies and with the C-suite at companies to help them think about organizational design and team building. When AI hit, he started using it a lot to help him know what to say as he went into different rooms. And pretty quickly, he realized that he couldn't just sort of take what AI gave him and then go say it because it didn't sound like him. There was a shallowness to it. It definitely helped advance his thinking and organize his thinking, but it sort of tapped out when it didn't feel authentic. It didn't feel like him. And so he pivoted. He started using the tool not to tell him what he should say, but to get him to have all sorts of options of what all sorts of other people would think about what he wants to say. Here's what I want to walk into the room to say. What would a CEO of a tech company say about this? What would an academic or a snarky member of the media say about this? What would a neuroscientist say about this? And then he would take that back and forth and refine what he was doing. But all along the way, while he was using the tools to get smarter and to grow in his expertise, he was also doubling down on what made him him, the unique sort of Neil secret sauce that he would bring as he came into the room and could connect with people with an
Mhm.
authentic story. So that I think is really representative because you can overuse AI if you copy and paste what your boss is asking into a tool and then copy and paste its response back to your boss. In the book, we talk about MIT brain scans. You have cognitive debt. Like it makes sense. You're thinking less, so your critical thinking skills go down. If you run into your boss a week later and they're like, "Hey, I really loved how you came up with that idea," you won't even remember what they're talking about because your brain isn't tracking this thing if you're just copying and pasting between people. And you can misuse AI. And that isn't just like give it the wrong data that you shouldn't. It's also not giving it enough context. If you ask it a basic question, it's going to give you a basic answer. I mean, so much of it is like if you hired someone and you didn't give them enough context, what do you expect of what they're going to be able to do? So I think Neil's a good example there. Jonetta Grisham is like my favorite story of the tool as a way to learn in new ways. So Jonetta is in her 50s, and she says in the book she was a hell no to AI person. She really thought the robot apocalypse was coming, that all of this technology was the end of days, and she wanted nothing to do with it. And she was taking sort of a course where one of the prompts was, "Hey, use AI to update your resume." So it was like, use the tool to help you sell yourself better. And it was a light bulb moment for her because she realized with the tool, suddenly she was getting help, better understanding how to define her skills, how to think about her experience, how to pitch herself for different jobs. And then she had another moment with the tools where she was doing another course to get an IT certification. And she was trying to learn this stuff that was hard to get. And she went to the tools and said, "Hey, here's how I like to learn. I like to learn in stories like this. I like to learn with analogies like that. Teach me this stuff like I like to learn." And the tools did that. And she passed that test. She got that certification. It helped lead to the job she's in now. So if you've ever been in a classroom where they're teaching you stuff and it's not in the way that you like to learn, which is probably 100% of us at some point or another, because education is built, in a standardized
Mhm.
way. It's built to teach everyone all at once. That's what these tools offer, an ability for you to have these tools teach you in a way that you want to learn about stuff that you're curious about so you get better quicker at it. So those are just two examples. We've also got Diego, an entrepreneur from Texas who has a great line. And he couldn't afford to finish college. He became an entrepreneur because for him that was a permissionless path. He did talent consultancy, but he has this line where you're no longer limited by what you know, you're only limited by what you can think to ask. That's what
Hmm.
these tools offer. And that's true on the learning side, like we talked about with Jonetta, but that's also true on the building side, whether it's Diego, Taj is in the book as an entrepreneur who was a coder who realized AI was coming for coding. And instead of just getting really afraid and giving in to inevitable unemployment, he said, wait, if it can do coding, it could do coding for me and I can go build this business I've been wanting to build for my community about the Caribbean culture and how people access barbershops. So we built it, launched it. It's a business. And so that's the energy we hope the book sort of instills in us all.
I love that you brought up Janetta in her 50s there, as before we kicked off the broadcast, Anish, you and I were discussing about, who's this for and who's most at risk. And maybe I naively spoke to, new graduates coming out and said, well, they've got the biggest to fear. Maybe folks like us in the second half of their career are least at risk. You see it differently, and you describe it actually in the book in a lovely way. You frame it. You talk about the traditional career ladder, and you say careers are no longer ladders; they're more like climbing walls. Can you maybe unpack that and talk about maybe who this is for, who's most at risk potentially, and how it's not maybe as obvious as folks might think.
Yeah, I mean, again, a lot of our story is about what work became in the industrial age, because that's what we are all reverse engineering from and in many ways afraid to change. So in the industrial age, we talked about how org charts get created because companies are growing really fast. You need order, you need predictability, you need stability. The org chart starts as a tree meant to show information flowing up, becomes a pyramid meant to show accountability and decision making flowing down. But all of it was like, we have so many people, we have so much to do, we need it to be stable, predictable, orderly. And in that, you have the career ladder emerge, where in that order, in those silos, in those functions, you get a job and you just sort of like climb your way up the ladder, and you're trying to get your boss's job, either at the place you work or at a similar organization. And what that ladder provided was clarity. What it didn't provide was a lot of on ramps. I mean, if you didn't start in the right place with the right degree, born into the right zip code, if you couldn't get into that right first job, it was really tough, if not impossible, to find a ladder you could even climb. But if you could get onto a ladder, the comfort of it was like you knew what you had to do. As we said, the org chart's going to the work chart because we're going from an efficiency focused economy to an innovation focused economy. And that means you're not climbing that ladder anymore, you're climbing a wall. And why we like the climbing wall is that when you're climbing, you're trying to go up. Everyone's trying to go up, just like the ladder, but there's no one way to go up.
Mm.
And when you're climbing, sometimes you go down to go up. Sometimes you go sideways to go up. Sometimes you pause and rethink your entire strategy to figure out how to now change how you're going to go up. It is a environment of sort of unlimited optionality in terms of how you can go up, and requires an incredible ability in each moment to know whether you're doing the right thing, whether you're moving in the right way. And so, as we were talking about who's most at risk, a lot of us assume it's those coming into a changing labor market. But if you think about it, the biggest jump everyone's going to have to make is from the ladder to the wall.
Mm.
If you've never been on the ladder, that's not as hard a jump as if you're climbing the ladder and well up your way on a ladder. Because now, if you're coming into this new world, it's going to build around you as you build your career. You're going to just come of age with this new world of work. It's going to be something that you're more fluent in, you're more adjusted to. If you're further along your career, it's going to be harder to jump. And so, to me, the issue isn't really job vulnerability, because again, all our jobs are going to get upended by AI, and it's actually going to be a worker led disruption, which is different than the past. It's not bosses figuring out what should happen to your job. It's you. And if you don't figure it out, that'll get figured out for you because you won't have changed your job. But it's going to happen like worker by worker. So the job part, I feel like we all have like real agency over. How we change that job is really the vulnerability for people, which is adaptability. Are you able to adapt? There's a whole bunch of just behavioral science on what it takes for humans to be adaptable, the ability to fail and be okay with it, the ability to be uncomfortable and be comfortable with that, resilience, handling hard well. How do you find the drive for that? You've got to tap into your curiosities, you've got to flex your creativity. A lot of this sort of like human capability stuff is what's at the center of whether people can adapt. And I think that's the biggest unknown for individuals, and that exists across every stage of career, across every age group. And so I think that's where we all want to focus right now, is how do we get ourselves able to be ready to adapt, and then start to lean into that.
I heard someone this morning talking about how, they've been reading about neuroplasticity and different activities you can do to try and, generate these neurons in your brain to give you the ability to adapt more, etc. And they were saying that their top tip, and this was I had not heard before. He said himself and his wife brushed their teeth with the wrong hand every night because apparently it works. It drives
Well,
different parts of your
just to
brain.
underscore it, we have a chapter called "The Humans Are Coming," and it opens with an ode to the human brain, which, to me and many others, remains the most incredible, complex object in the known universe. Not artificial intelligence, human intelligence, and we still know so little about the brain. But over the last couple of decades, what more we're learning, especially around neuroplasticity, is mind blowing, pun intended, I guess, because we are learning that the brain can literally rewire itself. I just finished two books. tiny experiments and little bets. One is about tiny experiments, neuroplasticity, and how you can develop new habits by doing tiny experiments, treating you and your brain like a scientific experiment, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, giving yourself a time bound period to give it a go. But you'll rewire your brain in the process. And little bets is about innovation, how all big innovation starts with just little bets that people make and companies make. And I say all that to say your biggest asset right now is your brain. And I promise you that you underutilize it and underappreciate it because that's just the world we've grown up in the industrial age, which has been about the machine, not the mind at the center of everything. But if you start really appreciating it and exercising it, you'll be amazed at what you're able to do, and it's going to become critically important for you to get good at all that as it relates to work. And there's a ton of research that's emerging around it. There are a ton of books that are out there on it. The tools themselves become a really good way for you to think about that. One of the things I use the tools for the most right now, it's changed like over time, is this coaching, because I am trying to change habits in some deliberate ways as I try to move my career to the next place. And so there are some tenets that I'm trying to start doing and stop doing. And the tools know this. The tools aren't some human. They are just like the context I've given it about who I am and who I want to be, alongside all the information out there on neuroscience and the ways of thinking. And I go to the tools multiple times a day to say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing. I want to like have this conversation. I want to send this email. I want to offer up this idea. And the tools are helping me say like, no, 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 no. That's what you said you don't want to do. You want to sit with that and let it like stew for a bit to see if you still want to do that idea in a week. Or no, 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 no. You're bombarding this person with your energy. Like give them some space and let them come to you. And so that's all neuroplasticity. I'm using the tools to help me build these new habits. But it's all going to come down to the brain, and that's an exciting thing for us.
I think to your point around age and how we get it wrong, it reminds me of the data published a few years ago. I think, if you remember, Anish, that said that the average age of a successful entrepreneur is
Yeah.
45. Most people see, in the tech world, these entrepreneurs are 21, 22, 23. Actually, it's not. It's folks who are maybe midway or past midway through their traditional career, so to speak. And so when you're looking at the opportunity, I think there's a big message throughout the book is that this is not a scary thing. This is an amazing opportunity.
Well,
Um,
what's interesting about what you just said is, would you say that the average mid 40-year-old would be able to be an entrepreneur? I mean, it makes sense to me that an entrepreneur, someone who has been entrepreneurial and honed these skills and lived through failures and understood how to manage the ups and downs by the time they're in their mid 40s, is really good at resilience, is really good at adaptability, is really good at entrepreneurialism. And so for the job that requires you to be really good at entrepreneurialism, like you're in a good age because you've learned a lot. But now what we're saying is like everyone's got to be, to varying degrees, good at that core skill. And if you look out at the peer set, and the percentage of people in their mid 40s who have been methodically climbing a ladder that has disincentivized them from taking risks, that has disincentivized them from failing and from learning how to handle hard well. I think that's like what we're getting at, which is the real disruption that could hit. Like if we all have to think entrepreneurially. Younger folks are able to think that way because they're just more risk friendly. That's how you start a career, even if they're not yet really good at it, because you have to go through failures to get good at it. But older folks, like we have to start thinking in a new way than we might have otherwise, which is to think entrepreneurially.
so I want to get our audience thinking about what they need to start doing
Yeah.
differently. And our audience, Anish, is largely senior folk who have responsibilities in recruiting, hiring, talent management across different organizations. So considering that's the audience, how should they think about this impact? Because they have the opportunity to influence how organizations hire, how they define roles, how they reorganize skills, learning and development. What are some of your top pieces of advice, or what have you learned from the companies and customers you've been exposed to within LinkedIn around what good looks like in this space?
Yeah, I mean, I there are many ways to go at that. For leaders, I think that we aren't seeing enough intent and an acknowledgement of agency out there, a pro-human intent, an intent that starts from what's possible for your workforce, if not what's necessary to keep innovation alive. And then remembering that leaders will get to make choices that will lead to whatever the outcomes are. There's nothing decided here. There's nothing predetermined here. AI doesn't know the answer. The future doesn't already exist, and we're just all along for the ride. Like, we all have choices we're making every day that are going to lead to what the outcomes are. And so I think if you're a leader, making sure you're caretaking that intent, and acting with agency is key. But I think for the profession, for the function, maybe the jobs as bucket, jobs as tasks, and the buckets work here, which is there's a lot of what HR does that is around bucket one. There's a lot of like, what's our protocol here?
Mm.
What's our, job description, first look there. So really being thoughtful about what you're able to and being excited about what you're able to hand off to AI to answer questions that managers have, like all of that stuff. Now, that opens up bucket two, which is how can this function now mature in new ways with these tools? Everyone who works in a talent function now needs to be as smart or smarter than me about the human brain, because that's going to be core to how you think about talent. So, how often or how are you thinking about neuroscience and talking to neuroscientists? How are you thinking about organizational design? Are you talking to behavioral economists? Are you just getting familiar in what all of those worlds are saying about what's possible for work? With that familiarity, using the tools to learn, what are you creating that's new and different? Are you offering up whole new ideas for how org charts could be remade in the work chart world? Is it a pyramid? Is it a square? Is it one line that's flat? Like, how are you starting to think about that? How are you thinking about the creation of a skills map and an expertise map across your company so you can pull people together around projects? Like, what does that look like? Who needs to be bought in? And then bucket three is really, are you in the room pushing the story forward and the argument forward on the overall business transformation that your company is going through? Because this is a moment of business transformation that is akin to maybe nothing else, for
Um,
companies, especially medium and big size companies. So it isn't just about figure out where we're going to put AI tools, what the business plan is, and then we'll go and talk to HR about what that means for talent. This business has got to completely change in some fundamental ways. AI's this new technology where you have to build the workflow around it. And we talk about in the book the example of electricity, where some factories said, okay, we'll put the electric motor where the steam engine is, and that's all will change. And then nothing changed about productivity. It wasn't until they tore down the multi-story factory, had one floor, gave individual workers individual electric motors that they had autonomy over, that required new training, the productivity surged to these like new levels. So you're gonna have to build all workflow in new ways around AI, but that isn't even it yet. Then you're gonna have to build entirely new ways of work around human capability that's gonna lead to the innovation you need, that's gonna lead to the growth that you want. So that's all bucket three stuff. That's making sure that you're in those conversations and that you're driving business transformation as much as what the talent planning is. And if it sounds really big and hard and even impossible, I get it. It's why we opened the book with the story of Apollo 13, this mission to the moon that, on the way to the moon, has this explosion on the shuttle that leads to oxygen venting into space. And suddenly the mission was about just bringing these astronauts home safely. And the big thing that allowed that to actually happen, even though the odds were impossible for that to occur, is that everyone started focusing on the immediate steps they needed to take, not the impossible odds. What do we need to do right now? Then what do we need to do next? Then what do we need to do next? And as they did that step by step, they brought these astronauts home. And that's what you've got to do. Focus on the immediate and remember, the great lesson of neuroplasticity, it always starts small. You don't have a big leap out of the gate. You just get to the daily practice of small steps, and over time they compound.
I guess if people want to know more with the Apollo 13 story, you can follow the great historian Ron Howard and how Tom Hanks saved the world. Anish, I want to close on something a little bit more personal, because when you look at your title, Chief Economic Opportunity Officer, and then you translate that back to the career you've had up to here, you are not somebody who has focused, if I can choose a word, on the economic part as much as the opportunity part. That to me, that narrative is very much strong within your career. You're not doing this so you can make everybody rich. You really believe in that opportunity and the spreading of that. Talk to me about your thoughts on who benefits most from this shift. Who's at risk of being left behind, and how can we try and balance the scales here?
Yeah, I mean, if uh, I think about economic opportunity, and there are a lot of terms for it: economic agency, economic dignity, economic mobility. Also economic freedom. I think that if you are legally free, but you have no ability to earn a living and yes, to build wealth. I mean, I think that's one of the things that the industrial age and capitalism has certainly supported, which is like a reduction in overall poverty, an increase in global health, just the ability to work hard, get ahead, and build the life that you want and go as far as your talent and tenacity will take you. That has been something that has been true for more and more people over time across human history, but remains true for far too few people. And especially in the industrial age, where it was all about efficiency and we started to value those technical and analytic skills the most, and then started to use degrees as a proxy. Do you have the MBA? Do you have the CS degree? Even before that, when it was about, who could invent big things, build things like railroads or cars or all that, you had to have the right connections and the right credentials to get the capital needed to actually go try and build something. And all of that, and we have a chapter called The Lost Einsteins in the book, greatly shrunk who got to be able to be innovating, who got to participate in the arena of economic opportunity. And if you believe what I believe, which is that all humans have in their head a human brain, which is amazing, and all humans have across lived and learned experience something that makes them amazing as they are, and that the world of work around them and the labor market, which is one of the least transparent, least dynamic, least efficient markets humans have ever created in terms of how we match talent and opportunity. It's all guesswork, generally based on these pedigree signals. If you believe that everyone's got this potential, but that they don't have a way to exercise it, then yeah, you're looking for like, how do we change the system to do it? And the thing that gets me so excited about AI is that it is the sort of precipitating event that will cause us to have to rethink how people access opportunity. And if we start from a belief in every individual's ability to be entrepreneurial, then you can imagine people from all different backgrounds suddenly being highly valuable at workplaces because of that different background, bringing them a new way of thinking or an ability to be resilient or adaptive that before was sort of something they had to do and is now something that they get to do as a badge, or launching businesses. I'm probably most excited for the new business starts that AI could unleash because the barrier to entry to be an entrepreneur is coming down dramatically, both in terms of expertise, but also building. And that means that we could see businesses across a broader set of societal challenges. And they all don't have to try and be the next unicorn. I mean, building a business as a teacher who realizes there's a tool that would help your rural community, the teachers in it, be able to do more in-person time with students or be able to better understand what the needs are of the class, like building it for that use case and having people that are able to back you, invest in you, not because it has to become the biggest company in the world, but just become something that is of value that helps you earn some more and have more financial security, but also helps you put this product out into the world that does better by the world. Climate, healthcare, there's so many areas where we could use innovation, where we could use technology to try and help us humans like live better, um, and do more. And so that's what I'm really excited about. It's really just about how do we help the potential that is in all humans that has yet to be unleashed, because we've never lived at a time where all humans have a shot at sort of going as far as their talent and tenacity will take them. But I think we're alive at a time where we get to start to see that play out. And that's what I am restlessly waiting to see, and going to the gym every day to make sure I'm healthy enough to live long enough to see that start to play out, because I think that's going to be really exciting.
Aneesh, I love that to close. And, kind of makes me think of, when I came out of college, the internet was blowing up. And the internet arguably gave, such access to almost free information across the world to so many people. And this now new version of that with AI maybe gives almost free access to intelligence to so many more people in the world, which is just a exponential step up in terms of what you could do. I'm excited about the book. I'm excited for people to read the book. Anish, tell me, where can we find the book? What's the best way to access it? Is it available in all good bookstores, Amazon, etc. today?
Yeah, if you go to linkedin.com/open to work, we got all the places you can get the book. The folks who are supporting us, Brene Brown, Adam Grant, Jay Shetty, have been generous with some praise for the book that you can see there. And we hope you go to your independent bookstores and that they've got it, because we really, are a part of why we're excited to do a book, which is counterintuitive for a tech company to do in an age of short form videos being the way that we all communicate, is because books are having a moment. It's kind of exciting. I think we all should read more, and books are a great way to process complex thought and to push yourself beyond sort of short and shallow thinking that a lot of how we consume information right now, incentivizes us to do. But books are having a moment, so I think we want to support through this book independent bookstores and just like all the places that are in your neighborhood, that are those like community centers. So hopefully they've got the book too, and you can go and get it there.
Anish, we could do a whole other podcast on the benefits of reading books and the research and
Yeah.
the neuroscience behind it. Trust me, it's out there. But I want to close and thank you so much for taking the time out to share a little bit about your journey. I think it's a phenomenal one. The opportunity you're trying to create for the world, this great book that you guys have published. I'm looking forward to getting some great feedback from our listeners. And maybe one of those listeners is going to create their own economic opportunity after reading this. And we'd love to hear that story back. Anish, thanks a million for joining us. Hope to have you on the show again soon.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you, the listener, for joining us for this special edition with Aneesh Raman from LinkedIn. You can find Open to Work at all major good bookstores, on Amazon, at your local bookstore as well. Keen to get your feedback, and do try and get a hard copy of it, folks. The old-fashioned way is often the best. Trust me, the science says this is good for your brain. Don't just go for the short summary. Read the whole thing. Give us your feedback. Let us know what you think. We'll be back next week with another great guest to talk about hiring excellence and hopefully give you some education that you can take to create more economic opportunity for you and the organization you work for. Until then, take care. See you next week.